Luke here for another DFS preview. It's nice to be back breaking down some golf, particularly on the DFS side after a week off. Now we've got the Hero World Challenge, that's Tiger's event down in the Bahamas. You have a pristine venue over there in Albany. Already have a course breakdown up on the channel. Highly recommend you guys check it out if you haven't already seen it. But this venue is primed for the best players in the world. We have a tough setup, but at the same time, it's scoreable for people that have their game, which is going to make it extremely entertaining to watch on TV. I'm expecting 3 or 4 of these top-end guys to go out there, have their game this weekend, and truly, the best player is going to win. On the DFS side, of course, we have Draftkings contest, and with just a 20-player pool, obviously makes for some interesting constructions this week. Pricing is definitely whacked off. I mean, you have people like Jordan Spieth there in the $8,000 range. You have people like Harris English at $6,200. So a lot of game theory that comes into play. A lot of putting salary, leaving salary on the table to try and get different. Overall, what we're going to do here is go over my top 6 plays to target. Obviously not going to have a value picks video or a fades and sleepers picks video this week, just because we only have 20 golfers. But these are truly the 6 guys that I'm going to have a majority of my ownership behind. They're coming in with good recent form, good course fits as well across the board. So let's hop right into it for this week. At the top of the board, we have Colin Morikawa at $10,600. Comes in as a decent recent form rank there at number 11, but that is slightly misleading to say the least. He comes in off a win at the DP World Tour Championship and also a 7th place finish at the Zozo Championship. The reason why this metric is so low is we didn't have shots gained metrics for those. I calculate that recent form rank based off a lot of the recent form metrics that are coming in. So as a result, again, not having that baked in is why we have him at number 11. If he were doing this again, able to get shots gained metrics from some of those other tours, I'm sure he'd be up there at number 1 or number 2. Before those finishes, he also had a 2nd place finish at the CJ Cup. So that's a win, a 7th, and a 2nd place finish coming into this event. So I'd argue that there's no one hotter in the entire world than Colin Morikawa. And then comes the course fit. He comes in at number 3 in the field. And like I said during my course breakdown video earlier on today, this is the ideal course for Colin Morikawa. Hit my top 3 key stats for analysis, again, are shots gained approach, shots gained off the tee, and shots gained putting. And while he's not the best putter on tour by any means, he absolutely kills it in those first 2 categories. We know he's going to go out there, keep the ball in play. He's the best approach player in the entire world. So for me this week, I see him as a very high floor player, but also an extremely high upside player. If he brings the putter to the table, he's walking away with a win this week by probably 2 or 3 strokes. If he doesn't bring that world-class putter to the table, probably at the very least finishing top 5. So really like him, whether it's in the DFS field or also in the outright betting market. In terms of another reason why we could see him do well this week is we're dealing with resort style greens. They tend to have a little bit of undulation, but they don't run as fast as a lot of the other venues on tour. We've seen Colin Morikawa have some success at slower green golf courses. He tends to be a little bit less confident with his putter. So anytime he gets these slower greens, he's able to be a little bit more aggressive, and it tends to free him up a little bit. So it's a little bit of the icing on the cake for Colin Morikawa, but coming in off that win with tons of good juju, obviously a very good course fit as well. That's why he's my spend up option for this week. Next up, we have our second man in, which is going to be Justin Thomas at $10,200. And a result of the pricing this week is that we can fit in 2 of these 10K options relatively easily into our builds. So that's why we have 2 guys over $10,000 here. JT comes in as the number 4 ranked golfer in the field, both in terms of recent form and course fit. And really, 2022 is going to be JT's year. After an up and down 2021, he spent a majority of it struggling with the putter. Randomly had the win at the Players Championship. I was lucky enough to see that in person all 4 days. Followed him for a majority of it as well. Hardly made the cut at that event. At one point was 1 or 2 strokes outside the cut line. Stormed back to win. Aside from that, a very underwhelming year. But if we take a look at the numbers, it's only underwhelming because JT, we have just such high expectations for him. He had 8 top 10s last year. He had that win. Multiple runner-up finishes, lost in the playoff to Colin Morikawa. Overall, it just felt underwhelming. It wasn't in reality. He was out there as one of the best players on the whole PGA Tour. And the encouraging part about his trajectory is that he's been great of late. He's finished top 26 in 7 straight events. That's excellent. Pretty much a top 25 in the last 7 events. with a bunch of top 10s to write home about as well. In terms of course fit, already talked about it. He's a top 5 course fit here. Pretty much identical to somebody like a Colin Morikawa. We know he has the ball striking between the off the tee play and the approach play to be one of the best players in the entire world. That is going to pay dividends at this type of a venue, as we've already outlined during our course breakdown. The icing on the cake here with Justin Thomas is his performance at no-cut events. A majority of his wins on tour, in fact, over 60% of them have been at no-cut events, even though just 10 to 15% of the events that he's played have been at these no-cut events. That type of disparity does not happen by coincidence. I'm not sure exactly why it's the case. I'm sure if he knew, he would try to replicate that at events that do have a cut. I have a feeling it has to do with his psychology. Maybe he's a little bit freed up, able to be a little bit more aggressive than he is in the past, just because he doesn't have to worry about the cut. He knows he's going to get paid either way. Whatever the reason, though, we've seen that success here in the past, so targeting him at these no-cut events is an absolute priority. Next up, let's move on to the bread and butter play. Is going to be Xander Schofley at $8,700. Somebody who obviously should be priced higher. I think it just has to do with the fact we only have 20 golfers, and you have to have a way to actually make a lineup this week. So you're going to have some of these guys that should be priced in the $10,000 range just completely mispriced here. So he comes in as the number 5 ranked golfer in terms of recent form and also in terms of course fit. So let's start with the recent form. You may be able to classify his recent run of form as sneaky, as some would say. He has solid finishes throughout the end of 2021, obviously highlighted by the gold medal finish at the Olympics, which isn't a PGA Tour sanctioned event, so not really a win in his book. Also a 5th place finish at the Tour Championship. And while he's always good when it comes down to East Lake, the guy is the whisperer of East Lake, and if there's going to be a golf tournament or a golf course to be the whisperer of, definitely want it to be the Tour Championship. That's where you can make a ton of money. But it's encouraging just to see the finishes in general. He hasn't really had that really bad, blow-up performance that most of the other people in this field have had. And in general, he has one of the best trajectories of any player on tour. He hasn't gotten that win, that really high-profile finish that maybe some of the other people in the field have. But they also don't have the consistency to match somebody like Schofley. So overall, really like the recent form coming in. I think it's a little bit sneaky. If we take a look at the course fit, just like a Justin Thomas, he is Mr. No Cut. Somebody who comes in with multiple wins at the tournament champions, other no cut events as well. His ball striking ability is also going to pay huge dividends here. He is one of the best off the tee players in the entire world, also a world-class approach player. So essentially the same type of player as those top 2 guys at the top of the board, also coming in with a lot of success at these no cut events. Next up, our value pick, we're going to be taking Sam Burns at $7,500. And to be quite honest with you, I do not understand the pricing here. Like I said with Xander, there's just going to be some of these guys priced down because there's only 20 players to speak of. But in reality, Sam Burns could be the most expensive player in this field, and I wouldn't argue it. He comes in as the number 1 player in terms of recent form. That'll be quite obvious when we get into some of these finishes why that's the case. But he also comes in as the number 2 course fit. This course is almost made for him. Obviously, you get a lot of boost here off the tee. If you're long, just because it's almost 7,400 yards, also not a lot of hazards to speak of. This is also a golf course where you got to be dialed in with your approach play, and you got to be able to roll your rock on Bermuda. He does all of those things. He checks all the boxes we're looking for. And if we take a look at the recent form, again, the most exciting part here, these are his last 8 finishes, and it's pretty much a drop the mic moment after this. We can probably leave the analysis at this. His finishes of 7th, 5th, 14th, 1st to win, 18th, 8th, 21st, and 2nd. That is unbelievable. His worst finish was a 21st place finish, and that 18th place finish was at the Tour Championship where he was starting next to last. So I don't really count that one. He had only one quote-unquote disappointing performance, and that was a top 25 finish. So enough said. That is insane. He has been the best ball striker in the world over that stretch. That is not an exaggeration. Better than Jon Rahm, better than Dustin Johnson, anyone that you can speak of. And he's also a Bermuda grass specialist. Fire up all the Sam Burns this week, particularly at $7,500, which is almost a full $4,000 off. Let's move on to the diamond in the rough now. We have Webb Simpson at $6,700. Comes in with great recent form. Comes in as the 2nd ranked golfer in the field. And he finally looked like himself at the RSM Classic, which was really great to see. He had the up and down season last year. Reports were, especially from his former caddy, that he was dealing with a lot of injuries, particularly to the back, and that it was affecting him long term. He's making compensations to his swing. much like a Colin Morikawa. But we saw Colin get out of that rut, obviously has been on a torrent stretch of late. So maybe Webb Simpson is projecting that right now. I mean, we've seen the approach play come around, so he may have really gotten over that type of a hump. Let's look at the approach play, though. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive here. He gained 9.84 shots gained approach last week at the RSM Classic, which is insane, and he only finished 8th place. That was because he lost strokes putting, which is something that we never see from Webb Simpson. He typically is a significant gainer on Bermuda grass, so we definitely expect that to come around. That was definitely an outlier performance there, and the approach play wasn't just evident at the RSM Classic. He also gained over 5 strokes on approach at the BMW Championship, and also over 8 strokes on approach at the Wyndham Championship. So this is not just an aberration, this is a trend of late. He has been absolutely dialed in, like we're used to seeing from a Webb Simpson. And in terms of course fit, he comes in as a top 10 course fit as well. While length is nice at Albany, we've talked about how it's going to boost to some of the other players that we're targeting. It is not a prerequisite for success, which definitely brings Webb into play. Much like the RSM Classic, the emphasis is much heavier on approach play here. Again, the around the green shots here can be a little bit difficult. They're a little bit more penal than most golf courses. And you got to get to 18 to 20 under par to win here. So you have to be really taking aim at these pins, trying to take advantage of the scoreable holes when they come up. And if you take a look at his putting on Bermuda, at RSM it was troubling, but for his career, he's a significant gainer on the surface. So if he turns around the flat stick, which I fully expect him to do so, especially with a week of practice, he had the week off for Thanksgiving, and was able to get with his coach, everything like that. I expect him to be dialed in on the greens like we're used to seeing. And if he even puts up half of the performance that he put up last week on approach, he's going to go out here and absolutely light it up. So like him there at a price tag of just $6,700. Again, the pricing this week is just ridiculous. And now for our flyer pick, Harris English at $6,200. I mentioned before that the pricing was wacky and that we had Harris all the way down here at $6,200. And to be quite honest with you, at that kind of price tag, he is a slam dunk play. If you take a look at his recent form, this is definitely why he's priced this low. He comes in as the 13th ranked golfer in the field. And it's concerning, right? But if we take a little bit of a deeper dive into it, we're able to discern that it's not as big of an issue as it looks. He has a withdraw sandwiched between 2 missed cuts. That's the glaring part. That's what is making everyone concerned. The fortunate part are that brighter days aren't too distant for him. Had a 4th place finish at the WGC FedEx St. Jude and a win at the Travelers Championship just a week before that. So obviously a little bit of a hangover from the win perhaps. Looks good the win, week after that win, but kind of fell off after that. That's to be expected from Harris English. He's not somebody who's going to come out and win golf tournaments every single week or anything like that. More of a popper than anything at all. But here in the $6,000 range, that's really what we're looking for. Poppers. People that when they have their game, whenever they come in with that motivation and that focus, are going to be in contention and potentially putting up a very large fantasy score. If we take a look at the course fit, it's a little bit more of the reason why we like him here. Obviously, he's very long off the tee. He's one of the longest players in this field. That is going to bode well at this type of a track. He's also very good on his putting, particularly on Bermuda grass. Definitely a Bermuda grass specialist. Gains an additional quarter of a stroke per round on those surfaces. And the real X factor here with English is the approach play. There's some weeks where he comes out and he's one of the best players on the field with his irons. There's some weeks where he flat out just doesn't have it. Like I mentioned before, we want guys that when they have their game are going to go out and be in contention, and that's exactly what we have here with English. When he has his game, it's when he has his irons, and he's a significant gainer on approach for his career. That's because of how good he is when he has his irons, but when he doesn't have them, he loses strokes in bulk as well. So definitely a volatile play, a little bit of an X factor for this field, but that's what I'm looking for, particularly in GPP contests, especially when we're down here at the bottom of the pricing board. That is all for the DFS preview, guys. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you have winning this week. Obviously, for me, I do think it's going to be Colin Morikawa, but I would not be surprised if Justin Thomas ended up breaking through for that first win in a while. He's been due. He's really looked good of late. He's been excellent on approach. The putting has gone better and better as he's been working through those things. So overall, one of those two guys, that's who I've got. But would love to hear from you guys in the comments as well. And as always, guys, really appreciate all of your support here. Make sure you guys go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already gone and do so. We're going to have our live stream tomorrow evening as usual. That'll be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, discussing the DraftKings slate, our projections, of course, any significant ownership numbers that we should touch on, and of course any questions that you have down in the chat. So I'll put a link down in the description so you guys can go ahead and set a reminder there, but make sure to stop on by. Again, that'll be tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. If you guys are looking for access to my projections, I'll remind you, we do have my Patreon page. It is just $1 for the month for golf or $1.75 a month for all the sports I cover. On there, again, projections for every player, ownership, whether they're in my player pool, access to the Discord, all that sort of fun stuff. So if you're not already a member of the Patreon, and I highly recommend that you guys go ahead and do so, make sure to go ahead and check that out. But until next time, until the live stream tomorrow night, guys, good luck with all of your lineups, and let's win some cash this week.